Sometimes in life, we tend to get caught up with our work, and this prevents us from enjoying the other things of life. Sometimes we may get so engrossed in our work and in our duties that we may not give importance to human relationships around us. And today's readings, in a certain respect, talk about the virtue of generosity and service. But above all, it also teaches us that we need to prioritize the things in our life. Well, priority is one thing and service is another. And once we are able to prioritize this, we will see that we will have a well balanced life. Now, in all the three readings of today, we see that how service is given importance. But as we read today's gospel passage, we may wonder, why did Jesus say, Mary has chosen the better part? Well, let's find that out during today's episode of Tea Time with the Word. But before we can begin our reflection, let us take a look at the readings for the 16th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Today's first reading is from the book of Genesis, chapter 18, verses 1 to 10a. The second reading is from the letter to the Colossians, chapter 1, verses 24 to 28. And the Gospel is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Now, in today's first reading, we see the generosity, or in other words, the hospitality of Abraham. It was a hot sunny afternoon, and Abraham saw three people approaching him. And what did he do? Now, he did not know them, but still he goes out of his way. He makes these three people feel comfortable. He welcomes them as if they are his guests. And then we see he takes great pain, great trouble in order to arrange a meal for them. And while they are having a meal, he is there with them, accompanying them and being of service to them. And what happens then? We see that one of these three men, they tell Abraham that next time when they make their visit, he and Sarah will have a child. And here we see that Abraham's virtue of service, of generosity, and of hospitality has been rewarded. The same thing happens to us in our day-to-day lives. When we do something good, it becomes like a chain reaction. Sometimes we may not even realize the graces that this particular service has got for us. But we see that every time when we help those in need, when we go out of our way to do things for others, there are graces and blessings being showered on us. Moving our focus to the second reading of today, we see that Paul tells the people of Colossae that it is his duty to proclaim the word of the God. And here he says that it is a kind of a service, because a service is something that people do wholeheartedly without expecting anything in return. And therefore Jesus also tells us that whenever we are to serve others, we should also have the same attitude in mind, not expecting anything in return. Today's gospel passage tells us the story of Martha and Mary. And this story of Martha and Mary teaches us about setting our priorities right in our lives. Now, usually we find both the aspects of Martha and Mary within us. That is, we find ourselves being serviceable, and at the same time, we find ourselves giving time for our responsibilities, for relations, friendships, etc. Nevertheless, we see that most of the time we are engaged in many activities, and we are preoccupied to finish them. And in the process, we are then worried and anxious. We see that in such a scenario, prioritizing our work will help. Because when we prioritize our work, we exactly know what needs to be given importance, and thus we can then carry on doing those things. Now, we see that why did Jesus say the role that Mary has chosen is the better one? Now, the role of Mary in today's gospel is a good example in this regard of prioritizing our work. She knew very well about her priority, and she chose to sit beside Jesus and listen to him. Now, many sometimes tend to mistake this by saying that what Martha's service is bad or that she chose a bad option. No, it is nothing like that. In fact, we see that serving and hosting guests was something that was considered good. But when it comes to Jesus saying that Mary has chosen the better part, it is because she was attending to him, she was listening to him. And in a way, if both of them would have been busy preparing the things, the guest would have been left unattended. And therefore, here we see that we need to balance things in our lives. Similarly, we see Jesus taught us that service is a virtue, and he himself practiced it throughout his ministry. He washed the feet of his disciples and set an example for us to do likewise. And therefore, we need to understand one thing: no work is small or big. It is our attitude towards that work which makes it important or not. And as we reflect on the readings of the day, let us ask the Lord that we may be hospitable, generous, and we may be at service by prioritizing our work and balancing between the responsibilities of life. Amen.